right-of-way, and Commission Member Music is not absent, or McLeod. Both are absent, Music and McLeod. And so I am appointing myself for the purpose of this meeting to be on the Real Estate and Transportation Committee and assigning the chair responsibility to Commissioner Reed.
I'm trying to get into my computer, so you have to bear with me a minute.
I was trying to buy as much time as I could. And of course, that'll cover these two items, the vacation of public right-of-way on north of West Peachtree Street, and the First Amendment to option and lease with the new singular wireless tower that's on the shared land of our utility and Orlando's.
I can introduce the first one just procedurally, given that we don't have a quorum for the committee. I'll just do this for informational purposes.
We do today because it'll be the two of us, because I've assigned myself to be a member of that committee today.
All right, the first item is a request to vacate public right-of-way just north of Lake Wire. It's either the last meeting or the meeting before that. You know, the City Commission did a rezoning on that property for the Peachtree Flats multifamily development. It's being shown on the screen there, and there's a right-of-way that bisects the property that's outlined in blue there, the blue hatch area. 20-foot right-of-way. That obviously is impeding their ability to develop the property since it bisects the property. So they've asked that the city vacate that right-of-way. There were a ton of public and private utilities in there that they've had to work through, and they've all been relocated and taken care of at this point. So now none of the utility providers have any objection to the vacation. Community Development developed a per square foot price for the right-of-way to be vacated, and they came up with $2.96 per square foot based on the square footage of that area to be vacated. That would be a total payment of $17,168. That's recommended for your approval. Jason Willey's been kind of spearheading this process, shepherding it through. Jason, you have any additional items?
Jason, if you can make some comments, that'd be great.
Yeah, so good morning, Jason Willey, Community and Economic Development. Palmer did a good job really summarizing this. You've seen this project come through several times recently, has been incentivized for the CRA. A group of developers, the ownership entity is Lake Wire Apartments, LLC, but this is a Peachtree Flats project, so that's a 1.7 acre property with that right-of-way included. So they acquired 7 separate parcels to put this together. It's going to be a 4-story apartment building, 84 units, about 105 parking places, so structured parking. So you'll see a 2-level parking garage and then 2 stories of apartments that would be on top of that. Market rate, 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom. Site plan has gone through review with city staff. It has been reviewed and approved. So we are moving forward towards one of the final steps, which is this right-of-way vacation as they proceed with their construction drawings with the hopes of getting started this summer.
Commissioner Reed?
I'm still not in line. I can't read what we're talking about.
Well, I'd make a motion to approve.
I'm sorry.
I'd make a motion to approve, sir.
Thank you. Second. I'll make the motion. You second.
Okay, all right. No discussion from my standpoint.
At this point, no, sir.
All right.
It passes 2 to nothing, and we'll
Sir.
go to the next one.
All right,
Mr. Willey.
Ramona's going to address the next one.
Good morning. Ramona Sirianni for the City Attorney's Office. This is a First Amendment to a lease agreement that we have with New Singular Wireless PCS LLC. This is based off a original agreement that the City Commission approved with Bell South Mobility in October of 1998. Which has since now become New Singular Wireless PCS LLC. They currently lease about 2,500 square feet of land for its cell tower and related equipment that's located at 2727 East Parker Drive, which is Lakeland Electric's Technical Training Center, and actually part of the McIntosh Power Plant. The land is jointly owned by both the city, which has a 60% ownership interest, and OUC, which has the 40% ownership interest. The parties are now seeking to extend its current term because it is now in its 3rd and final renewal period, and that's set to expire on October 19th, 2023. The First Amendment seeks to provide 6 additional 5-year renewal periods, the first of which would be exercised on October 20th, 2023. The first 3 renewal periods, which is that 15-year period, may be automatically exercised by New Singular. And then the remaining 3 renewal periods would require mutual written agreement of the parties. However, both the city and OUC still retain the right to relocate New Singular during any renewal period in the event of a sale or redevelopment of that site. So we have some flexibility to move them if necessary. If the parties are unable to agree on a relocation site, then we do have the ability to terminate that agreement. In addition, during any renewal period, if New Singular elects to terminate prior to an expiration period, they would be obligated to pay the city rent for that lease for the remaining months on the term, provided that that payment wouldn't exceed $75,000. Pursuant to the First Amendment, the rent paid by New Singular to the city and OUC will be $31,482.11 per year. That would commence on October 20th, 2023 during that 5-year renewal period, and that represents a 15% increase from what they're currently paying. The total revenue generated for the first 3 renewal periods pursuant to the First Amendment is $546,608.13, of which the city would receive $327,964.88, and that would be based on its 60% ownership, and then the remaining amount of that revenue generated would go to OUC based on its 40% ownership interest.
Questions?
None?
Can you go over this $75,000 payment again?
Yes, that $75,000 amount is the cap on what New Singular would be required to pay the city if they terminate early. So as long as it doesn't exceed the $75,000, it would be whatever they owe rent remaining on any of the extended terms.
So if they vacate in year 2, then they pay $75,000 or pay all the leasing, which is...
It would, if in the extended period, each period is 5 years, so they would have to, if the amount would exceed $75,000, they would only be obligated to pay $75,000. That's the way that would work.
Thank you.
I do have a question. If the tower were relocated and it was relocated only on Lakeland's land, is there an issue?
No, then obviously we would get the 100% revenue generated from that.
No, or OUC issue with
No,
that? Okay.
no. It's simply OUC is involved because they have the ownership interest in that property, which is located.
I hear a motion.
A motion to approve?
A second. With that, all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Is approved unanimously. Is there any other order of business we need to discuss to our members?
No.
Palmer, is there any other issue we need to discuss?
For real estate.
If that is so said, then this meeting is adjourned.
Thank you very much, and we'll wait till no time at all because it's 8:30, and then we will have discuss our agenda. The first things are the approval of the consent agenda, and in the consent agenda we have 2 items under 7 beyond the minutes under items 7A and B, and so if we could discuss those from the finance director's standpoint, that would be great.
Sure. Good morning. The first item is from Fleet, involves Fleet, Solid Waste, and the General Fund. We've got Gary McLean here if we have any detailed questions. We need a request and appropriation. We've got 3 maintenance accounts in need of some monies, and one is contractual services for some work on 8 trucks in need of repair. The second is tubes and tires. We've recognized a great increase in the costs for recapping the tires on the big trucks, and then body shop services. We've had some unfortunate accidents with our police vehicles in the last year, and so our costs have gone up for that, and then that's about $75,000. So in total, we're requesting $435,000 360 from solid waste, and the other 75 from the general fund.
Questions or problems leaving that on the consent? Commissioner Simmons, you good on that?
Routine?
Well, I don't remember us having these types of things, so this is not very routine. This is, we're usually pretty, Fleet's very good at being able to project costs. Unfortunately, this year we've had some unfortunate incidents that have driven the costs up. All right?
Wouldn't be typical. All right, so we'll leave that on? Okay, we'll leave that on. Next item, sir?
Second item is something that we bring to you twice a year per Resolution 4051. We auto appropriate, whether it's donations from private individuals that are designated for expenditure on specific projects or operating costs at the donor's requests. The others and are two other very large items which can be overtime that we are reimbursed either through Lakeland Police Department or Parks and Rec. And the last piece on here are just the finalization of the carryovers from October that had all been approved. So
The prior year's budget,
yes,
and they have not been carried over.
they were carried over in October. We just codify it now every 6 months, right? Yeah.
Any questions on any of those? Yes, Commissioner McCarley.
What's the DEA reimbursable overtime? What's DEA stand for?
It's a drug enforcement agency.
That's what I thought, but I was just
Yeah, it's through LPD.
checking.
Yep,
Okay.
through LPD, task
Thanks.
force. Yeah.
Questions? All right to leave on, Commissioner Simmons, you good on this? Leave on consent, we will do so. Thank you very much. All right, next we have nothing until we get to public hearings A1, and that is City Attorney Davis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We've gone through these before, but let's go ahead and hit them briefly this morning. The first item is a change to PUD zoning for the old Summit Consulting office complex off of Commerce Point Drive to allow kind of the next level up of uses beyond just purely office uses. Chuck?
Good morning. This is Chuck Barmy, Community and Economic Development. As we talked about before, this is the former Summit Consulting site. They've moved their operations over next door here on Lake Mirror. And so this intent here is to change the zoning of the former complex from O2 office zoning to PUD to allow not only previous office uses, but also a palette of other uses that would be acceptable. And so at this point, there are no plans to conduct any additional construction or any other activities outside of the existing footprint, which is shown on the screen here and would be adopted as part of the PUD. And so if approved, the PUD would allow the whole range of office uses, including medical office and research and development. It would also allow office support retail, personal services, those types of things that you would expect to see and you would hope to see in an office complex to help limit the amount of traffic coming in and off on the adjacent road system. Also, community facilities such as daycare centers and churches would also be allowed. And then infrastructure and transportation uses, communication studios and utilities and essential facilities, level 1. So the site development plan would be as included in the PUD, which essentially is what's out there today. The development standards would be in compliance with the O2 urban corridor context of our urban form standards. Landscape buffering would be also in compliance with the land development code. And then what I'll do is I'll just read E because it's a little complicated. For change of use, for existing tenant spaces, a change in use from the current most recent use to a different use may necessitate a change of occupancy group review. Such a review may require certain improvements to the property and the need for additional reviews and/or permits, including but not limited to compliance with building and fire codes with their respective reviews. So there may be a need to sprinkle building, do some additional things in terms of grease traps, backflow preventers, depending on the specific type of use. So it would be going into existing office space. And so we wanted to lay that out in the conditions as well. And so that is all we have on this one. I also want to note, too, that the staff report says that the recommendation was approved by the P&Z by 7-0 vote. It was actually a 6-0 vote.
I was curious to see if there had been any opposition to any of the particular uses, and everybody was good.
I think there were some concerns earlier on before the PUD was, application was requested about, I think it may have been like a obedient school or some other type of similar use, but nothing since the application and nothing certainly related to these conditions.
Any questions or problems on this one? All right, number 2. Oops, sorry, Commissioner Reed.
Chuck, how many square feet is this total involved?
I can grab that for you. Total floor area, eight buildings, almost 79,000 square feet.
Thank you.
Any other questions, issues? Number 2.
Number 2 is a proposed conditional use for a couple of new duplexes on Lakeshore Drive just to the west, across from the town center, the old Searstown. Chuck's showing you the location there.
So this is the west side of Lakeshore Avenue, just north of Parker Street, behind the former Searstown site. We'll go through a tour of the property as you're looking west across Lakeshore Avenue at the subject property. And essentially, the zoning right now is straight multifamily 22 or MF22 zoning, which allows for duplexes to be constructed subject to the approval of conditional use permit. And that's what's on the table here as far as the request today. As part of the conditional use request, there would be a binding site plan that would show the layout of the units, the parking, driveway access onto Lakeshore. And so the proposed conditional use conditions allows for 2 multifamily dwellings or duplexes. The maximum intensity would be 4 dwelling units. The minimum lot width would be 75 feet. Minimum lot area would be 10,125 feet. We've got a binding site plan that would be adopted with the conditional use. Each dwelling unit shall have a covered entrance feature, either a super or porch, as defined in the Land Development Code. Also, the landscaping and buffering would be in accordance with the Land Development Code, and those conditions are listed there under number 6.
In this picture that we had in the illustration shows a building in it. Is that? But your photograph of does not show a building in the middle.
It's all completely vacant as of today. The aerials are a couple years old.
That's what just clarifying. Okay. So it's ready for 4. Questions at all? Right, number 3.
Number 3 is a proposed PUD zoning for 2 9,800 square foot office/warehouse buildings that would have office and light industrial type uses. This is just to the east, probably a couple of blocks to the east of the Geico office building on West Pipkin.
Correct. This is out as you get is actually completely surrounded by Central Florida Development's Air Park development on the north side of West Pipkin Road, just east of Old Medela Road. See the site here. Immediately to the west is a property that has a cell tower on it today. And of course, the pictures really show also what's going on right now with the West Pipkin Road widening project by Polk County. The proposed development would allow for 19,600 square feet of warehouse or kind of minor office type uses. The intent here is because of the access limitations, is to not allow a high trip generator in this section of Pipkin Road. And the layout is generally as shown on the screen here. And so what we'll do is we'll jump into the conditions. We would allow non-medical office uses, research and development, warehousing, and motor freight transportation uses level 1. Industrial type service establishments, but not allowing automobile towing services. Wholesale trade level 1. And so those would be the range of uses allowed under this plan. The site development plan would be as included in the PUD document. The development standards would be in accordance with the I-1 special, suburban special purpose context in the urban form standards. Outdoor lighting would be in compliance with the land development code as well. The property owner has been working with the county to address the driveway connection to Pipkin Road as part of the ongoing Pipkin Road construction. And so really, our conditions are related to requiring an annexation petition be submitted to the Lake and Area Mass Transit District, and I know that work's underway right now. ADA compliant connections, from sidewalk connections from Pipkin Road to the main building, as well as cross access to the adjacent properties to the east and to the west. And then, of course, the project would have to comply with Polk County's permitting requirements.
Since that's Commissioner Reed.
Chuck, they're allowed, what, 1 inch per every 300 feet?
It's out there, you're probably looking at somewhere in that range. The part of the challenge is this parcel is relatively narrow, and so they would only be allowed one access point. And there's an access immediately to the east that we're having to work with as well. So as those properties develop to the east and the west, the intent would be is that we would use the cross access to minimize those connections on Pipkin Road. But
I don't think they own the property to the east or the west, do they?
But you have that illustrated by that in the drawing on page 7 that shows a potential for the cross-access.
it's right there along the frontage of the southern building. And the way we typically implement that is for properties that come in for site plan review, we require the execution of a recorded cross-access agreement that's recorded with the clerk of courts, and that's really because they can't meet the basic minimum standards as contained in the land development code.
Any questions on that? All right, next.
The fourth item is the major modification of the PD ordinance for the Cleveland Heights YMCA for a new field house, daycare facility, and some parking. Chuck?
So the current plan is to request the construction of a 41,000 square foot field house on the west side of the YMCA campus, and a 4,000 square foot expansion of the existing childcare facility. We'll do a tour of this site as well. As many of you know, it's on the northeast corner of Westover Street and Cleveland Heights Boulevard, just north of the Pole Parkway. The project would also allow, would require the removal of the existing Cleveland Heights exit-only driveway to accommodate the new field house building, as well as a relocation of the Westover Street driveway. The western driveway would get shifted east to provide better stacking from the existing traffic signal there on Cleveland Heights Boulevard. Last meeting, there was a question about the setback from the Cleveland Heights right-of-way. That setback, proposed setback is 20 feet and 24 feet from the northern property boundary. There's a drainage easement in there that certainly the applicant is aware of and would be working within to make this site work. A little bit closed in shot here also shows the new parking configuration. The plan would allow or would accommodate 135 additional surface parking spaces for the site, and would be coordinated with the Three Parks Trail West project, which will be under construction this year and will complete the 3.6 mile loop of the Three Parks Trail. We'll go through and just show the changes to the existing PUD conditions, and then we do have some renderings that have been provided by the applicant that we'll show as well for the new building. So essentially, what we're doing is putting in verbiage the language to support the layout plan. The minimum setbacks would be shown in the revised exhibit, as well as the landscape buffers, signage. There would be a set of binding architectural conditions for the elevations, and I'll show those here in a minute, for both the field house and the child care facility. And then in terms of transportation, prior to certificate of occupancy, what we would do is work with the YMCA to construct a slight extension to the southbound left turn lane on Cleveland Heights Boulevard at Westover Street. Right now, traffic, depending on the cycle lengths for the signal, do extend out into the through lane. And so what we would do is work with the YMCA to have that work accomplished either by the city or by the applicant during the construction of the site. So we've been working with them on that factor. We would have internal pedestrian connectivity. We would look at the driveway on Westover Street at the time of site plan review. Right now, everything's compliant with the land development. We certainly do not see any issues with that. And then in terms of the elevations, this is the field house view looking from the parking lot north. And so Cleveland Heights would be to the left and Westover would be behind in this rendering. This would be the shot looking from Cleveland Heights Boulevard towards the field house into the site. And then here are the technical elevations for that rendering. There was also a question about the existing boardwalk in Peterson Park, and when we asked Parks and Recreation about the status of that boardwalk, it's really too early to determine when it would reopen. That analysis is still underway, and so depending on what the analysis shows would depend on what kind of work needs to happen to fix or repair that boardwalk.
Dollars. Right.
All the above.
Yes, Commissioner Reed.
Chuck, how far back is that stacking lane going to be to the east? Again, I drive that road quite a bit, and then what are their hours for operation? That's going to create a lot more traffic there in the mornings and in the afternoons, and it's quite clogged up in the daytime when the pool's going in and out. And I didn't know if their stacking lane's going to be big enough, because that's going to just create a lot more traffic at those times, I assume.
There would be additional traffic generated by the project, but there's already an existing, as you noted, traffic is already extending into that inside lane on Cleveland Heights Boulevard during the PMP period. And so the intent right now is to extend the turn lane back a maximum of 40 feet. That avoids the palm tree, which is the southern palm tree on that median island there on Cleveland Heights. More importantly, it helps us avoid having the residential driveways on the west side of Cleveland Heights Boulevard having full access to Cleveland Heights. You can imagine northbound, somebody would want to turn into those residential driveways across the turn lane. So we want to try to not extend that turn lane too much, but that 40-foot extension would address certainly the existing conditions as well as the project traffic that would be generated.
That's a stacking lane on Cleveland Heights. What about how far did they move the entrance back to the west on the?
Westover.
Is that far enough back, do you think?
Based on the traffic analysis, that would be far enough back. That's about a 75-foot extension back to the east. And what we wanted to do was avoid, there's a very large tree immediately east of the current proposed location, as well as not create an offset issue with the Cleveland Heights Animal Clinic driveways to the south. So there was kind of a balancing act we tried to strike here, but this definitely would address the proposed project traffic and the existing traffic coming out of that intersection.
Just as a thought, since we're on that, on Westover, there's a cut across the back of that by the pond that can come out between the apartments and Cleveland Heights Animal Clinic.
There is the driveway connection back to the child care center would remain in place, and that's the eastern driveway adjacent to that buffer. So with the new parking configuration, vehicles would have the ability to either come out on Westover directly or come back further east, particularly if you're coming from the child care facility, and come onto Westover Street further back from the intersection even than what's shown here.
Would not want it to create a shortcut of some kind, is the concern. And I don't know if there's a way to plan.
I think what we would do is at site plan is make sure that, and typically the applicants do a very good job of reducing the cut through their parking lots. And so we would just look at the drive aisles and the parking configuration to make sure that that's not the case.
Great. Yes, sir.
How many students do they anticipate having there?
That I don't know. We'll take I know I saw the number. I'll have that ready for Monday.
This is going to create a big problem on that intersection, from my perspective.
The intersection is tight. I live there. So the intersection is tight during school and at 5 o'clock. But after that, flows pretty well. And, we have all the Peterson Park baseball fields back there as well. And so you even have a lot of that traffic that, but it flows pretty well other than school and 5 o'clock.
The city's also working to, with the next resurfacing project in that area, to refresh and create the high visibility crosswalk markings for all 4 approaches at the signalized intersection, as well as add a street light on the west side, because at night that is a pretty dark.
Yes, good, good.
With the park and everything happening here, we wanted it better lit as well.
It's a great idea, and then I assume that would be true on the Three Parks Trail as you'd go back, that lighting that they,
I think that there are some lighting improvements tied to that as well, but I'll take a look at the design plans and.
it's a little dark through there too. Any other questions on this? Good? All right. That then brings us to resolutions 1.
The first
Thank you,
resolution
Chuck.
is related to the vacation of the right-of-way for the Peachtree Flats project that you heard on the Real Estate Committee portion of the agenda. It's been a while since we've done a right-of-way vacation, but we have a little more process involved with that than other things because of the ability, the potential for impacting people's access to property and that type of thing. So our city policy requires that we actually adopt a resolution expressing the city commission's intent to vacate the right-of-way. We actually publish that resolution in the newspaper, so to provide that a little extra notice. And then we proceed to adopt an ordinance after first and second reading of the ordinance. So this is the resolution expressing the city commission's intention to vacate the right-of-way, and later on the agenda, you'll see first reading of the ordinance as well. Again, related to the Peachtree Flats project.
Second item?
Second item is a subordination agreement with FDOT. You've heard quite a few of these. We have some electric and other public utilities up around the intersection of US 98 and Big Cypress Boulevard, once you get into that 2-lane portion of 98, and then also around Pioneer Drive up there. The DOT, from what I understand from our right-of-way staff, is planning to actually install a roundabout at the intersection of US 98 and Big Cypress Boulevard. So I had the same reaction as you did, Commissioner, but that's what I'm being told is
There's been some bad accidents.
plan is we need to relocate some of our facilities around there to facilitate that roundabout. And there's also going to be a multi-use path up maybe closer to Pioneer Drive. So the way these subordination agreements work is we agree that we'll relinquish our easement rights, and the FDOT then in turn agrees that if they require us to relocate our facilities, they will pay the cost of those relocations and hold us harmless. So that's what that's about.
Any questions or concerns on that?
One more question. Why is this part this is just real narrow in the middle? I can hardly read it. It's not in the normal format as is yours? Yeah, mine's kind of like that. It's just real narrow.
I'll do that.
It's been that way the whole.
Okay. Yeah, so you want to expand it, which you can do by.
I tried reading it at home the other night. It was.
I'm doing wrong. Right here. And then you can slide this over and it'll be bigger. Like that?
Okay, thank you, sir. Make it bigger yet?
Okay. Any questions on this one at all? All right.
The third item is related to the expenses that we've had to occur related to the repairs of Unit 5, and then also the need for additional funds for the RISE project. This is a reimbursement resolution under IRS rules. We're expending a lot of the existing energy revenue bond that we issued to make the repairs to Unit 5. So we're going to issue another bond to cover the additional costs for the RISE project because of the funds otherwise being expended for the Unit 5 repairs. So this allows us to go ahead and begin to incur those expenses for the RISE unit. It also will cover some of the additional capital improvements we intend to make to harden Unit 5 a little bit more. So this allows us to expend those funds, and then we'll roll those into the bonds once we issue the bonds, just to comply with IRS rules.
This is important for us to be able to utilize the bonds well as well.
IRS says as Palmer says, IRS says you have to adopt this ordinance to then be able to reimburse yourself if you go borrow monies for something in the future. Yeah, just that very simple.
Probably very unlikely to have opposition.
Yeah.
All right.
So how much are we expected to go on?
I didn't hear you.
How much more are we going to ask to
Well, this is an
Total amount?
estimate of 70 million additional. So that's a pretty good estimate. Gina and her team have been working on that. As we've talked about recently, there are still the unknowns that could come up, right? And so I think Mike Beckham and Gina and their team have done a great job of building a contingency into the repairs on Unit 5. $4 million is what they've estimated. As they said, their hope is to not have to spend much of any of that. That's once it gets back here, the equipment gets back here and is being installed. So that's the hopefully the high estimate of what we're going to have to go back to the market for is 70 million.
Questions? All right, thank you for that. Before we go on to community redevelopment, and you're good? Yeah, okay. Before we go on to community redevelopment, I keep wanting to ask this, and I'm a little off agenda, but we had talked, when we talked about Lake Miriam, the need to move one of those high utility towers. Have we moved anywhere along that, in terms of making it possible for that corridor to be used? And I know we were talking with the county, I think, a little bit.
At this point, we haven't had any additional conversations with the county since probably the end of last year, and we have asked about the cost to remove or relocate that power pole. So those are some things that we've had some internal discussions on, but there's really been no movement at this point in terms of project development or assigning dollars to that project.
It would just seem to me, and as an encouragement, that is an inevitability for us to be able to make that corridor work, and it only costs more the longer we wait to do that. And I don't know how we get that underway, but I would encourage it.
We can certainly contact the county and see what they might be able to, maybe have some additional coordination. I think the big issues are going to be funding. I mean, that's always the big
sure
issue.
It is.
And so as we go forward in our CIP development processes, see what our options might be to partner or see what the county might be able to bring to the table as well.
It's just be a continuing issue forever. So that's something we'll end up doing. So we should do it when it's the least expensive time, which I would think would be near now.
Absolutely.
Now, back to the agenda. I keep thinking about bringing this up, and I just haven't. Back to Community Redevelopment Agency, then, of course, we'll meet as a Community Redevelopment Board. Number one.
Commissioner Reed will like this one. That's not a typo on the agenda. This involves property in Mulberry, actually, in the city limits of Mulberry. So back in the 90s, due to the interesting tax laws back then, there was some property exchanges that occurred where the LDDA, which actually served as the CRA back then before the city commission took that over, the LDDA acquired ownership of a little over 46 acres of property in Mulberry, and there were some different property exchanges. The end result of that was that the LDDA, as the CRA, ended up owning the Terrace Hotel, before that was sold out. So this was some kind of weird arrangement of property exchanges to result in the CRA, the LDDA getting the Terrace Hotel. The LDDA eventually sold this 46 acres in Mulberry to a private party. As you've heard during previous agendas, Florida statutes has an automatic reservation of mineral, phosphate, and petroleum rights. So unless you affirmatively release those rights, those are reserved to any local government that sells property. So those were automatically reserved when the LDDA sold this 46 acres of Mulberry back in the 90s. So now Highland Homes is preparing to develop this property. And Chuck, I think he's showing where this property is, and I think there's an aerial as well on the next slide that'll maybe show it even better.
Just east of Highway 37.
Yeah, and flip to the next slide. I think there's a pretty decent aerial that'll show you the property. Maybe it didn't make it in there. So the aerial would show you that this is this is, you can pretty clearly tell that this was previously mined lands, so it's very unlikely that there's any phosphate left in there or other mineral-type assets there. Again, Highland Homes is preparing to develop this for a subdivision, and as part of the title work, has flagged this and is asking the City Commission release those mineral and phosphate rights to the property. So that's what that's about.
And there's a low likelihood we'd want to mine that property ourselves as a city, I would think.
So we'd have to kick some people out of the houses and probably get rezoning from the city of Mulberry to start digging up that subdivision to get the minerals.
The area that is to the northeast of that, that's in orange, the larger area, what is that under Caribbean Drive?
I'm not sure. Let me see if I have the aerial here in mind. I mean, it looks undeveloped on the aerial, but that's, that could be out of date at this point. I will say that just to the east, northeast of this 46 acres is 7 wetlands.
Right. That, and I was thinking the Mims owned some property. That's not that golden area?
I don't believe so.
Okay. All right. Commissioner McCarley.
I think I just answered my own question. Never mind.
All right.
Sorry.
All right, so focused on the red blocks, the real question will be.
It's not the red blocks, it's the thing on the screen there says property location. So it's that gray area just south of the yellow hatched area.
Someone will point that out so we can see it clearly.
Right here.
Okay, thank you.
And is it everything? How big an area is that?
Let me, I've got a,
46 acres.
Would it be everything to here?
let me show you, I've got a map. Yeah, it's in your, it's on the,
Yeah, I saw that. So it's everything inside the square?
Yeah. Just
On this one.
right where your finger is, straight up.
Right here.
Yeah.
But that would include all this, right? Right. Yeah. Very good. Thank you. Any other discussion on that? Yeah, so it's the last slide, page 10, that shows that the best for us, purposes of exhibit. Okay. All right. So that'll be unique to any action we've ever taken, I think, as a commission from our tenure.
Let me make,
Sure.
so we exchanged property and the mineral rights were retained by us until someone comes along and say, well, I want to develop this property and own it. Then we have to then relinquish those rights.
correct, and that
what we're doing?
happens by operation of law. There's an automatic reservation of those rights unless the purchaser requests the release.
Is there no time duration as to when that might not be in effect?
Time limit on it.
Generational.
It's interesting.
Yeah, it is interesting. Well, and this,
Somebody can come back and say, you own these rights, even though we own the property, and so please relinquish it. Okay.
you wouldn't want to develop on that unless you had that, those relinquished.
Thank you.
All right, that brings us then to our city manager, item 5A.
Good morning. I have 2 items for presentation this morning. The first one is regarding the award of an RFQ number 2311 for construction manager at-risk services for Lake Crago Park, and this is for Phase 3 out at Lake Crago. The park currently has a dog park, restroom, boat ramp, recreation center, boathouse, and fishing dock. Phase 3 of Lake Crago will construct 3 competitive multi-purpose sports fields with sports field lighting, a restroom, parking, landscaping, and irrigation. The city did go through the RFQ process, and we were seeking a firm that could provide a guaranteed maximum price for the construction of Phase 3, and also would meet qualifications and experiences that the city was seeking. There were 2 submittals to the RFQ process. There was a selection committee who ranked the two submittals, and Rada Construction was ranked as the most responsive and qualified. They are based in Lakeland, Florida. The other respondent was Miller Construction, also from Lakeland, Florida. There was a notice of intent process that the city went through back in December. Funds for construction of this Phase 3 are currently budgeted in the 2023 Public Improvement Fund. $2,240,143 of the funds are from District 1 Parks and Recreation impact fees. $200,000 of the funds are Florida Recreation Development Assistance Program grant funds, and $548,307 are from the Public Improvement Fund itself. The total project budget is $2,987,828. The project will begin construction within 90 days of contract execution and is estimated to take approximately 1 year to complete. So it's the recommendation is to approve the ranking of the firms from the selection committee and to execute the contract with Rada Construction as presented.
Questions, Commissioner Reed?
It shows we have 6 fields here. Which 3 are they going to build, you know?
Pam, if I can have Pam Page come forward and she can highlight where those 3 will be. And Commissioner Reed, we thought you would be happy to hear that they're lighted because you've asked for that many times in the past.
That's the way to go.
Good morning, Pam Page from Parks, Recreation, and Cultural Arts. We are, on the plans, there are shown 3 soccer fields to be built and 3 baseball fields. We're building the 3 soccer fields in this phase. And, well, soccer, multi-purpose. We'll use them for every sport.
Fields.
They're currently not in the budget cycle.
That's a master plan long-term.
Yes, sir.
I was curious, this is to Mr. Brossart, of the 548 that came out of the Public Improvement Fund, was that an allocation for this, or is that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Less than we had allocated, to some degree, hopefully?
I don't think so. No, I don't think so.
You used everything, didn't you?
These fields are expensive to build.
Well, and that, of course, relates to what we've been seeing with, increases in labor and material and fuel and everything else. We're not surprised, like many other things, including the Lakeland Electric discussion we had a moment ago, that, the costs are coming in considerably higher than what had been initially estimated.
And we are going with LED sports light fixtures, which are more expensive too.
Wonderful.
And that, because we received the grant, we were able to do, push for the LED fixtures.
Use less power for us long-term.
Yes.
There is no, in this master plan, pickleball courts anywhere, is there on Crago?
No, not currently.
And could that be a good location for some courts?
It could be. It's very close to the 6 that we currently have in Lake Parker Park, but it is a facility because we're not near residences that could accommodate the noise.
Enthusiasm.
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. And so that might be something to consider just as you go forward. Any other comments? Yes, Commissioner Reed.
Pam, can you point out on the aerial where the boat ramp will be and which buildings are going to be built?
Map?
Yes. It's page 2.
There's an aerial.
Yeah,
Page
we have a
2.
map on our screen, but I didn't
Page
know if
2
it
of
could be
that,
up there
if you
somewhere.
can bring it up. Oh. Sure.
Okay, yes.
Right.
And just to be clear, the boat ramp already exists.
Exists.
There's not another boat ramp. We're referring to the one that's already there. That's part of what's already included in the park.
Into Crago.
We are going to build some new buildings.
Yes, in terms of the restroom that was mentioned.
They're going to be way down here on that left point. spot is?
This only includes the construction of the 3 competitive multi-purpose sports field with the lighting, the restroom, and that's the building I think you're asking about, parking, landscaping, and irrigation, and no other buildings are included in this phase.
Would appear that that restroom might be able to be in between the 2 fields.
Looks like it's that little orange dot, I'm not sure what's that.
Well,
It's at the end
It's a
of the
playground.
parking area. There are 2 fields that are on one side of it and 1 field that's on the other side.
so it's by the parking bill, not where that orange is, that's a playground. So it'd be between the 2 and the 1. Okay.
And just a matter of note, we're building the lift station large enough to accommodate the expansion of the 3 baseball fields when we do that. So it'll already be done. We've done those calculations.
It's Commissioner Simmons.
Baseball fields that you're constructing, a lot of soccer fields.
They're multi-purpose football, soccer, lacrosse.
The point is the baseball fields later to be done would work in the same lift station.
Follow-up question, what's the demand for your soccer field usage?
Currently, we can't accommodate all the requests that we get
Right.
for soccer. Yes.
This new construction of the fields, will that make you able to accommodate, or you'll still be lacking?
Still have a deficit, but this will make it much better, and especially with all 3 fields being lit, that will be able to accommodate nighttime practice and games as well.
5:30, 7:30 slot is a hugely desirable slot because it's cooler. And it's, and then everybody wants to be on them, right?
And Commissioner Simmons, I can't recall if you were on the commission when we had a previous discussion. We try to be careful. We refer to them as soccer fields many times, but as Pam has pointed out, they're really multi-use fields. So when she talks about not being able to accommodate all of the uses that are requested out there, it's really not just soccer. It's also football that can go, lacrosse, and other events that can occur on those multi-purpose fields. But just out of habit, a lot of times they're referred to as soccer, but they're not specifically only for soccer.
What's the source of these requests? Is these like added soccer teams? What's
Yeah. It's interesting, but as soccer has become so popular, some of the nonprofit groups are splintering off and forming their own groups, and they have their own demands and bring children basically back in and expands not only their program, but we've got so many people moving in to Lakeland that we just don't have enough fields for every single person who has started a great program. And they're all really good programs. And it's our goal to be able to accommodate them. It is. Look at it this way, we're keeping all those children off the street. So that's our goal.
And in our Lift Lakeland discussion that we had just the other night on the Equity Forum, and one of our top six priorities is youth sports, and soccer being a big one. And there's a league that has been formed recently that can't get access to fields, and that's part of you have the players, but you don't have the ability to have access. So this just helps that kind of thing happen as well.
It does, and it really helps. Our goal is to have these kids practice early enough that they can be home and in bed at a reasonable time. And so the demand before 8 o'clock is quite heavy.
Commissioner McCarley.
Just to Commissioner Simmons' point, I know I asked this probably a year or so ago. Do we have the data on the zip codes? Are we capturing any of that to know, if we have Little League players that we're missing out or soccer players that we're missing out, are we capturing that at Kelly Rec or Simpson Park so we know and have quantitative information on what those requests are?
We know how many folks that we service through the leagues, because the leagues keep that data, and they provide it to us. And that's how we go. And they do code it by zip code as well, so we could ask the leagues to provide that information.
So we could see that.
Yes, because we don't register the participants. The private nonprofit leagues do.
Right. I would just like to see too, as we continue to grow with our growth curve and looking at the Southwest Park, understanding the priorities of the families, and I agree, everybody needs to be home by 8 o'clock so they can go to bed at a decent hour. But to really have that idea of numbers would be helpful, I think, of what our gaps are.
Be able to provide that.
Just one follow-up question. I didn't realize that your subject would be so popular, huh? At any rate, what are your fees? What do you charge?
We're not picking you up at
I'm
all,
sorry.
so if you could, thank you. So
Okay, thank you. So what are your fees? What do you charge for these fields?
It depends on the organization. If it's recreational, then we only charge the $1 per youth. If they're tournaments, that's a whole different story, and we rent the fields, and it depends on how long they're using them and how many of our staff have to be out there, because they pay the labor for our staff to be there as well as the rental of the fields so that we can fertilize them and maintain them.
Commissioner Reed.
One last question for me. Pam, why couldn't they orient the easternmost field north and south?
Don't have enough land.
Looks like it to me. Ideal orientation is north and south, and I just didn't know.
We're squeezing that field in, recognizing that it's not ideally the way, the orientation that we would like, but if we could only, we had to squeeze it in as one field in that direction. And so I'm sure we'll rent the other two quicker, and then we will that other one. But that's great for practice and at night.
And, you know, the other point maybe to make here is, you know, Lake Crago and all of that development of the park was master planned years back. And so we're not really planning it and designing it, you know, each phase at a time. It was all done, you know, previously, and these are just the phases to get us to the build out of how it was master planned.
Normally, you're used to seeing all of our fields where we put two together so that when they wear down the goal mouse, we can turn the fields, but we didn't have enough land to do this one. But we didn't want to give up the third field because we just need it so badly.
And it uses the space in between.
Obvious question, excuse me, the obvious question would be, do we have any more available land out there that we can convert to parks and rec activities?
Specifically at Lake Crago?
No, anywhere.
We have the property that we acquired down in the southwest portion of the city. And so kind of going back to, you know, how we determine the needs of you know, multi-purpose fields and other recreational amenities, you know, we have in the comprehensive plan certain levels of service standards that, you know, connect to population and other factors. And so the city does have land and at least a couple of properties that are pretty significant in size, 30 plus acres, and with at least a plan to develop more recreational facilities based on where we've experienced an awful lot of population growth and do not have any recreational facilities down in that southwest section.
Thank you.
That park is 106 acres, is that right? The southwest?
About, yes.
And are you planning soccer for there?
Yes, we're planning, we've master planned, I believe, 3 fields.
Wonderful.
For there as well.
Multi-purpose sports.
I meant multi-purpose sports fields. Excuse me. I'm a slow learner. All right. Okay. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very, very much for that and for the planning as well. What's your next item, sir?
Okay, the next item that I have is regarding a task authorization with Geosyntec Consultants, and this is for a Lake Morton sediment treatment study. Lake Morton is one of the priority lakes within the city of Lakeland, which has a current regulatory mandate requiring reduction of nutrients. The Florida Department of Environmental Protection has placed Lake Morton on the verified impaired waters list, and we've had other similar conversations regarding other lakes in the past. This Lake Morton sediment treatment study will be conducted in 2 phases to evaluate various sediment treatment options to reduce internal nutrient loads from sediment recycling and improve surface water quality. There are major elements of this sediment treatment study that have been developed. Results of the Lake Morton sediment treatment study will be used to assist the city in planning, permitting, and budgeting for Lake Morton sediment treatment and lake restoration projects in the future. Funding for the project in the not-to-exceed amount of $245,677.70 is provided in the fiscal year 23 stormwater capital improvement budget. So the recommendation is to execute the task authorization with Geosyntec for the Lake Morton sediment treatment study as presented.
All right, questions on that one? All right, that then brings us to back to City Attorney.
A couple of ordinances for first reading. The first one is an amendment to the pension plan for the general employees to expand the deferred retirement option program participation period, i.e. DROP, from a 5-year potential period to 8 years. It's not mandatory. They would provide the option for employees to stay in DROP for up to 8 years. This would cover, as I said, of all the general employees. We just did this for police with their pension system. Fire has their own pension system. The one group that of the general employees that would not be immediately covered by this is the UW employees. Their collective bargaining agreement specifically addresses their retirement options and the amount of their drop period. So that will have to be amended separately through a negotiation process with UW.
We think that would be done at the next negotiation period or in advance of?
Yes, the existing CBA is expiring, I think, September 30th of this year. So that'll be a subject to negotiation probably very soon.
We're already in the process, and there have already been meetings and planning meetings to engage with that collective bargaining group to begin those negotiations to try to meet the deadline of the expiration of the contract.
Questions on this?
If I may,
Yes.
Mr. Mayor,
Sure.
Before maybe any questions, because I may be able to answer a few of them. You'll recall, as Palmer suggested, when the police collective bargaining unit came through with this request recently, and as part of that discussion, we discussed the fact that likely the general employees, may want the same. And so what occurred following that is our general employees have a employee association, and the General Employees Association requested to meet with the general employee pension board to ask for their thoughts on doing the same for the general employees. When that request was made, I asked the general employees or the employee association if they would wait to do that, because I wanted to make sure that this was not just a request that was coming from the members of the employee association board. I wanted to really understand throughout all of the employees whether this was something that they desired or not. And so we went through a process. You have seen some of the videos that I put out to the employees, and we put out a video explaining that this was going to be a survey that they would be able to participate in, so that we could really judge their interest. And so then we went through a process then of taking the survey, and we provided that option in a couple different formats, through a hard copy process or a digital process. And so following that survey, what it resulted in was of the 3 subclasses of the general employee pension, the results were that there were 72% of the employees who desire this option. And even if you look at the individual subclasses, the lowest response rate was almost 63%. And so the combined is 72%. That's a very good indication that this is something that the employees would like to see happen. After that, we then went and had the discussion with the General Employees Pension Board. And, you know, they have a fiduciary responsibility, and our question to them at that meeting, they had the pension attorney there. We had a report from the actuary. Our finance director was there, and we had a discussion, and the board, following that discussion and the information from the actuary, you know, the board agreed that there's no financial negative impact related to the option to extend from 5 to 8 years. And so we did go before the General Employees Pension Board. So I just wanted to point out that process to you. We went to great lengths to ensure that this was something all of the employees, are based on the responses, wanted. And as Palmer pointed out, and as we discussed with the police, you know, our experience currently in the 5-year program is, I think, only about 30% of the participants go the full 5 years. So how many will go, you know, the 6th, 7th, or 8th year? We don't know. But what is important is from just a competitive standpoint. Other agencies, the state and the like, are doing similar things with their drop programs. And so just leveling up to what we're seeing happening in the industry is important from a competitive standpoint as we try to retain employees and recruit employees.
Excellent recap. Commissioner Simmons.
Yes, you explained that the 5-year, that's mandatory. Is that correct? The 5 years not mandatory? I mean, if someone enters the drop program, in order to reap full benefits, they have to be there for the full 5 years. Is that correct?
No, I mean, it's totally optional to enter into drop to begin with, and it's totally optional how long you stay in there. Right now, you can stay up to 5 years. You could leave after 3 days if you wanted. And this would just expand that option to up to 8 years.
Okay, so no difference. Basically, they can leave anytime they want to. If they,
Right.
if they
Lets
chose,
them
if
stay
they chose
longer.
so. But aren't there some benefits associated with the length of time of being within the drop program?
And maybe our finance guy over there can pipe in, but it essentially allows you to accumulate more upfront cash for your retirement needs.
That's exactly right. When you enter drop, you stop contributing to the pension plan. The city also stops contributing to the pension plan on your behalf. And at that point, you choose whether you want to just take what the market provides, or you want a guaranteed 3% return. Okay, so if you choose the 3% fixed, what would be coming to you if you had left the city when you retired, every, on the 15th or the 30th of every month, will actually just roll into a Voya account and earn interest, and it just keeps accumulating at that point. Okay, there's no cost to the city for that. In fact, we went back and looked from the inception of drop, and we have the city, the citizens, the employees have never had to subsidize drop in any way. The pension plan actually makes money on drop because most people take the 3%. So even in the years when maybe we don't earn the full 3%, there are many, many other years when we're earning the minimum required of what was 7.25%, now is 6.75%. So everything between this 3% and the 6.75 stays in the pension plan. So it keeps it solid. The employees just accumulate those pension monies the same as if they had left and they had gone and purchased an annuity or whatever they wanted to do with that money. So it's that part's no difference.
Gives them the incentive to stay longer.
Sure, and for us, what we're recognizing is we're having a hard time finding people to apply for jobs, the same reason the state initiated this over the last year. Teachers, police officers, firefighters, getting people to apply for jobs. And so if they can get folks that are tenured to stay longer, and it's no cost to the plan, to the state, in this case to us, to the citizens, to the employees, no reason why you wouldn't do it in that respect, right?
Commissioner McCarley.
How does this affect probably this is more for you, Sean. How does this affect the culture of our people who are waiting to maybe transition into leadership roles and I know it doesn't affect just leadership roles and executive suite people alone because it goes throughout the whole organization, but what does it do to our culture of sustainability of wanting to encourage people to stay and grow within the organization if someone's has the option to stay a little bit longer and that doesn't really help us? I don't think sometimes it's an unintended consequence that, we have talent that we're not cultivating and that might leave. So then we still see the hemorrhaging effect of good talent and organizational memory going by the wayside. So although I think it's really good on one side of the coin, there's always that other unintended side from a cultural aspect of people having mobility upward.
So certainly there can be a delay in that. I mean, if someone is next in line and a person in drop then decides to stay, let's just say the maximum of these 3 additional years, that could delay someone else from having that mobility. The problem is, though, there's no guarantee for that second person that they are going to promote. We hope they are. We're preparing them to, but there's no guarantee in that. But it is that question that drove me to want to hear from the employees, not just from the Employee Association board, but from the employees. Did the majority of them have that concern that you just pointed out? And what the responses that we got came back appear that overwhelmingly the vast majority do not have that concern. Do some? Absolutely. And so we continue to mentor them. We continue to give them opportunities so that if that person that they're hoping to replace, with no guarantee, but hoping to replace, stays a little longer, well, then we just cultivate them a little longer and hope to retain them so that when the time comes that senior person does drop, that the next person is ready. But it does delay it.
Well, and I think from a return on investment standpoint, so if you're looking at cultivating people within a department, and I'm not even talking about, going up, it could be across the board. Maybe I've worked in LE a really long time and I'd like to go to Parks and Rec, or maybe there's some other opportunity that I have outside of this organization decided I was interested in and I want to do a parallel shift. It feels like there's an unintended consequence of stagnant structure. And so I just want to be cognizant of that. And if we are, encouraging and mentoring and making sure people have an opportunity to stay within the organization, even if it's in a different department, I would highly encourage that. And also understand that we have invested in those people as well. So we don't want to push them into another organization where we lose that return. I just think it's a broader discussion than just the one silo of, the financial aspect, because I do think that financial aspect cross-cuts as well, because we have this trajectory and it takes learning curve to have people understand the culture of the city of Lakeland that I think is priceless. When you have people here that understand that we appreciate quality of life and public safety and what our priorities are, and I think they work so well to provide good service to our community. I would just hate to see that go to another community, or I'd hate to see what we've invested in those staff members go by the wayside because we extended this a little bit longer. I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I just think we need to be cognizant of our blind spots.
Well, and I want to heavily reiterate what I said earlier, because that was my principal concern. Absolutely, no question about it. We're very cognizant of it, and that's why I wanted to hear from all of the employees and have each one of them individually have the ability to tell us that. Not just a board member who is representing their interests, but from them individually. So that's why we went through a pretty extensive process to make sure we heard from them to see whether that concern would outweigh the other side of the position, and it came back pretty overwhelmingly that while it is a concern for some, overall the numbers speak for themselves.
Do we have an update on that salary and benefits survey that we're doing through HR? Where are we in that process?
That is ongoing. The consultant is still doing the work on that. We have anticipated all along that sometime here in the early part of the summer, we will get a response back from them, but that is ongoing with the consultant.
And I want to tag on to your comments, Commissioner McCarley. There's ranges in people's professional growth. And sometimes this will allow an opportunity for somebody who's maybe not quite ripe yet to be able to either, so this person that stays on longer and drop in the lead position can say, today you wouldn't get hired. you want this job, these are the things you're going to need to do to get there. And so it does give us, I mean, the difficulty is that we'd love to see that we get someone right to the range and they're ready to go and we can put them in. And sometimes we're going to be able to save some people that might have gone somewhere else because they didn't realize what they needed to do and get that opportunity. So it's hard. And so the majority of the employees liking it means a lot with respect to my view of that, because otherwise, if that were an overwhelming concern, I think we'd see less.
And I really just, I very much appreciate the point that Commissioner McCarley is making. Again, it was my principal concern, and that's why, I mean, I met with the EA Association, I did the video, I've met with employees and talked with employees, we explained through the survey that they understand that there is a negative consequence on one side of the issue, which is the one you're pointing out, and I was very concerned about that. Amongst the department directors, we've had 3 or 4 really good conversations about exactly that. So no question that's a concern. But the numbers have come back. I will tell you, I thought the numbers would be a little closer to even than they were. And so the employees have spoken, and I'm recommending, and staff is recommending based on that response.
Great concern. Commissioner Reed.
Thank you. And you partly answered my question. What other organizations have instigated this particular increase in the drop?
I'm going to, Sherry, I've got an email that's probably about a year old now where we looked at that, and I can find that, and well, we probably actually, I don't know if we've updated that, but we could update it even because more have happened in the past year. We do know that FRS, Florida Retirement System, for some of their pension categories did that. Sherry, do you want to mention a few others that you may
Yes,
come to
hi,
mind?
Sherry Watson, Director of Retirement Services. Good morning. We actually went through our Florida Public Pension Trustee Association as well as our pension attorney. There's not a lot of pension attorneys in the state of Florida, so they represent quite a bit of the cities and the municipalities. I don't remember the exact number. I would have to update that as well because it has been over a year ago. But there's quite a few general employees that do it. Just about all police are doing it right now. The state of Florida did it with the teachers. So that's why we implemented this. The employees were asking us about it. We took it to city management as well. So the employees seem to be on board with this. At least the majority of them do.
Thank you. And I'm not expert in drop by any means, but when can they enter drop? After 20 years, 25 years?
So there's 3 different ways that you can enter drop. A lot of it is for the seasoned people. Unfortunately, it also has to do with our ages. That's just how it goes. But there's 3 ways. You can be age 60 or age 62, depending upon which pension plan you're in, and have 10 years of service. You can be here at 30 years of service, or you can use the rule of 75. And the rule of 75 is your age plus your years of service, as long as you at least meet early retirement age for that pension plan.
When they enter drop, can you give me a percentage of how many drop out early? Do you know how many don't go 5 years right now as opposed
Yes, sir. I actually did a survey, and I took the last 10 years of those exiting drop, and about 30% of the people stay the full 5 years.
Okay, and when they do this, Mike mentioned, if they enter the drop, they have 2 choices of we can get the COLA, or what's the other one?
No, sir, the COLA is separate from that. And Mike was actually explaining to you, once they decide to enter into the drop, they have 2 choices. They can either earn 3% from the pension plan or what we consider and call self-direct. We move their pension payment over to their Voya account, and that's what Mike was explaining to you. They can move it in there and invest it however they want to. We have about 35 investment selections. So if they're conservative or aggressive, they can decide how they want to invest it. Once it's over there, it cannot come back into the pension any longer. It is over there for them to invest. It would be a nightmare to calculate if they brought that money back. Therefore, they stay self-directed for that portion.
And then those returns are just based on market
Yes, sir.
and what the market's doing.
Now, the COLA is separate, and I'm sorry to interrupt, but I wanted to explain to you how the COLA works. The actual COLA works when they first come in, get their calculations, they can take a reduced benefit, and at that point, a year from then, it happens annually, we would increase it if they purchased a 1%, 2%, or 3% cost of living adjustment. It does reduce their basic pension amount, so it would be increased if they chose a 1%. That benefit would be increased 1% the following year, and it would be from forever until they
But just to be clear, though, that's their pension. That's a separate
sir.
from drop.
Yes,
So COLA is not connected to drop.
No, sir.
They make that choice with their pension.
Yes, sir.
Drop actually saves the taxpayers money.
Yes, sir.
I mean, that's the bottom line. So it's important for us to recognize that there's not a negative benefit other than we have the benefit of a continued brain trust that exists available to us on a longer basis and the opportunity to grow people.
Yes, sir. And right now, our pension plan is up about 8%, so give or take a little bit, depending upon which day it is. But with us having to earn 6.75%, we pay 3% if that's what they choose. So we still are up 3.75 just on the drop people alone. So, and that's the incentive, is the pension plan investing more monies, we make more money, and that therefore we actually do not mind paying that 3%, or my trustees do not mind awarding the 3%.
Right. So any other questions? Good discussion, all the right points. Thank you very much for that. All right, next.
The next item is again related to the vacation of the right-of-way for the Peachtree Flats project. That's this first reading of the ordinance. So we'll have second reading of that at the next meeting. We have a couple of miscellaneous items relating to the water utility. The first item is a task authorization with Civil Serve Design Group. The DOT is planning a pretty major rehaul of Lakeland Hills Boulevard between Parkview Place and Griffin Road. They're going to be doing roadway resurfacing, major drainage improvements, and median construction, as you might imagine. That's going to conflict with our water utilities there. So we are bringing on Civil Serve to do the design, bidding, and then they will also do construction administration services for the relocation of our water utilities in that corridor there between Parkview Place and Granada. We're also, while we're in there, going to take that opportunity to replace some asbestos cement water mains and replace them into one larger 12-inch PVC water main. The total cost for Civil Service services under this task authorization is $419,205, and that is included in Water Utilities FY23 budget. And I see Robbie out there, Robbie Kniss, if you have any questions about the project.
This is freshwater, correct?
Potable water, yes.
Yeah. So how many of the asbestos concrete pipes do we have?
Good morning, Mayor, Commissioners.
morning.
This is Jim Lilly with Water Engineering.
Hi, Jim.
Excuse me. I'm actually the project manager for this project. We have a number of asbestos cement pipes still in the distribution system. I can't give you an exact figure, but there's quite a good bit, and we're working. Anytime a project like this comes up, we do what we can to replace as much of it as possible.
So you grab it while you're in?
Yes, sir.
Good. Other questions? All right, you want to do the next one? Which,
The next item is very similar to the previous item,
Right.
A slightly different project, however. This is the FDOT's project at Drainfield Road and Waring Road to install a roundabout there. You all heard about that, and the same issue is presented. We're going to have to relocate some water utilities, and this project also will require the relocation of some wastewater facilities as well. So we are retaining, through task authorization, Rummel, Klepper, and Call LLP to do the design, bidding, and construction administration services for that utility relocation. And I should say, with both of these projects, we're going to be bringing back a separate item to select the contractor to actually do the construction work for the relocation. So that'll be handled by a separate contract for both of these. This is just for the design, permitting, and then the construction administration services once we get to that. The total cost for Rummel, Klepper, and Call's services under this task authorization is $196,593, and that is also including water utilities FY23 budget.
we use them a lot anyway, don't we, on other projects?
I'm honestly not sure. I've never worked with them personally in the 6.5 years I've been here.
So it's still serve.
Right, between the two, I think. Any questions on that? All right, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thanks for your patience. Always thank you for your patience. Next.
Right, the last item that we only have one utility item. This is an agreement with MP Predictive Technologies for the purchase of 25,000 feet of medium voltage cable. This is for the RICE project. The cable will provide power between the generator and the switchgear, as well as between the switchgear and the transformer at the McIntosh Power Plant. The city's purchasing department issued an invitation to bid back in April. We received 3 responses from 3 vendors. MP Predictive Technologies, Inc. was the vendor that submitted the lowest price and was also deemed the most responsible bidder. And as you can see, Gresco came in very close to the low bid, very close. However, in the process of the evaluation, Gresco actually came forward and had to adjust its bid. So the actual bid for Gresco was $801,380. So that definitely widens the gap between the low bidder and MP Predictive Technologies. Upon the approval of the commission, the equipment is scheduled to be delivered in August of 2023, and then we will go through a separate bid process to have a general contractor install that cable. The total cost is $724,110, and that is budgeted in the overall RICE project, and which was funded through the city's energy revenue bond for that project.
Questions on this? All right, thank you very much. That brings us to any items you'd like to bring up as commission. Anybody have any? Yes, Commissioner Reed.
Thank you. I had the opportunity to meet with the historical board last Thursday, and it was interesting. I got chastised a little bit against the comments I made. I challenged them on not being proactive in getting these notices out, letting us know when these houses were accepted. And I found out that that the Preservation Board has a little bit more teeth than the Historical Society. Is more of a observational kind of both of them are volunteers, but anyway, so I suggested that they move forward and try to collaborate together and come up with a list per se that they would give us. They would have a list of homes that they thought might qualify, and they may be bringing something before us in the future of what might pre-qualify, and they're going to probably get with you, Palmer, in the future. But it was an interesting meeting, and hopefully we won't let some of these homes fall through the cracks. I know we can't prevent all of them or any of them from definitely being destroyed, but invariably it might give us a better categorize them of which ones might qualify for different things. And so it was an interesting meeting, and I was very glad to attend. It's just myself, by the way. I know it was
I should bullet, Palmer.
Anyway, that's what I would like to bring forward. So.
Just really quick, I had the Ridge League of Cities board meeting last night. So that, for the group that doesn't know, is Philip Walker, Commissioner Walker used to serve on the Ridge League, and then Florida League of Cities as well. And so it's a group of all the municipalities in Polk County, Hardy, Pasco. Am I lying about Pasco? I'm looking at Emily. It's a big group. So we had 17 there last night, but I just wanted to talk about J.P. Powell. He was one of our city commissioners over in Winter Haven, passed away suddenly a couple of weeks ago. He'd been fighting cancer, but I don't think that anyone expected him to pass away. He actually had a city meeting that evening. So all of our hearts and prayers go to their family, to the Powell family. The services were last week, and he's just been a stalwart municipal servant over the last, I think, 20 years. Right, Sean? Don't you think it's been about that long? And just really a wonderful human being, and has given a lot to not only Winter Haven, but Polk County and the Ridge League. So I just wanted to mention him. He was also a lot of fun, and we miss him terribly. But that's a great group. We're getting ready to do our board officers coming up this summer, and then we're hosting here at the City of Lakeland on June 8th. Not the 6th, the 8th, on a Thursday at RP Funding Center. So I know that we usually have a good turnout when we're there. So it's a fun group, and they really, all of us are looking out for, our citizens. It's a lot of small towns, and it's really important work. So I'm glad to be a part of it. So thanks for appointing me to that, Mayor. I enjoy it.
I've got something, Mayor.
Yes, Commissioner Simmons.
I'd like to thank the officer on the other night who risked his life after being shot. I thought it was remarkable that the officer got shot in the foot and then had the courage and the fortitude to continue pursuing the suspect, and then engaged in another round of gunshots with him, and he ultimately captured him. And that's real, to me, that's real heroism.
Yeah, it's very good.
Heroism, and he should be accommodated. I don't know what, I'm sure there's something within the city's protocol that recognizes persons who do outstanding, above and beyond the call of duty kind of services. I thought that was real remarkable. He took a person off the streets who would have the potential to continue to shoot, and at the risk of his own life being injured. I mean, I thought that was really remarkable. We certainly need to recognize when our city police officers do such heroic acts, and it needs to be recognized.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thank you for that, Commissioner. You know, first of all, the officer is recovering very well, and you're going to see a presentation at the commission meeting on Monday from the Lakeland Police Department. And they're going to talk about a lot of the mental health, issues that they face, and some really neat services and resources that we're providing to our officers, all of our officers. But a heroic young officer in his actions the other night, in his response and the way that he handled that, and we certainly have several various different commendation opportunities. Yes. That some will happen relatively in short order, and others we just actually went through a process of giving out some annual awards, so some will be delayed, but there are commendations that will occur.
Thank you.
And you might want to make that comment at the end of their presentation Monday, so that would be a good timing for that. All right, yes, Commissioner Reed.
Briefly, I didn't know that, particularly, thank you for sharing that with me. I read a lot of your emails, but I didn't catch that particular component.
There was a conference, a police conference right after the incident between both our police chief, Sammy Taylor, and the sheriff, Grady Judd, and so they actually gave their account of the circumstances that led to the person being captured.
Good, because I noticed in South Florida when they had that school incident, they had people that was there and had an active shooter, and they failed to go in and protect. Again, we have a good set of police officers that are fearless up here. So.
Excellent. Anything else? We had a nice forum Lakeland Now did on equity forum at the Well on Wednesday night, I think it was, Tuesday night, and it was one of many that I think that they want to do, and the next one will be on education, it emphasizes the importance of us keeping live all the initiatives that we have raised and not letting those things kind of wane over time. And so I was encouraged by the participation in it, and I think the crowd overall is encouraged that there's direction forward, and that's what we need to keep in place. All right, with that, then we're adjourned. Thanks so much. And, I should have also commented that our communications department has done just a wonderful job of creating this environment, because this works very, very well for a temporary area, and it's easy to see and hear. So thank you very, very much for all the work associated with that.
Effort that also includes Stewart as well.
Okay,
Bill, may I mention one more time, we do have the Mayfair starts tomorrow.
Oh, yeah, we should mention that.
We need to make sure that was well attended, and
it's a great opportunity to enhance the art in your home. All right.
I thought Sarah would bring that up.